Hi, welcome to the Guitar Department on MC22. I'm your host, Joe Alton. On this episode, the holiday season's coming up. We're going to talk about how to buy a guitar, either for yourself or possibly if you are buying a guitar for somebody else and you don't yourself play guitar. I'm going to run through what to look for and what to watch out for, where to buy, and what to buy your guitar player friend if that's what you're looking for. Welcome to the Guitar Department. All right, now before we jump in, first thing we have to do is make sure we're in tune. So if you can follow me, I'm going to give you all 6 of my strings, and real quickly we'll just make sure that you're also in tune. We'll start with my first string, the E string. Let's jump up to the second string. This will be your B string. Here is the third string. This is your G string. On to the fourth string. This is your D string. Up to the fifth string. This is your A string. And last but not least, the top string. This is your low E string. All right, now that we're in tune, I thought we'd learn a song real quick. So I'm going to teach you the main riff to the song Seven Nation Army by the White Stripes. It's a relatively simple song, but if this is your first time playing guitar, this might still be tricky for you, so just be patient and try to follow what my hand is doing. Here's how the lick sounds at full speed on the guitar. And it repeats over and over. Now, it's not the entire song, but it's the main riff. So the way I played that is I started with my third finger on the 7th fret of the 5th string, your A string. You're going to pluck that, and then you're going to pluck it a second time before going to the second note. And that second note is the 5th fret of the 4th string, down here on the D string. So I've switched from my third finger on the A string to my first finger on the D string. And then I'm going to go back to my third finger on the 7th fret. And that takes us through the first 4 notes, and from there, we're just going to ride this 5th string down all the way through to that last note. So the next note, it'll be 7, 7, 5, back to 7, and then 5th fret on the A string. This time we're going to go to the first finger, but we're not going to change strings. And then we're going to slide that down. You actually just lift it and move it down to the 3rd fret of the A string. And then down 1 more note to the 2nd fret. Now, rhythm-wise, those first few notes are a little bit quicker than the last few. This song's pretty simple to get down as far as the rhythms go because they have the drum beat keeping a steady boom, 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 boom. So, go ahead and try that yourself, and keep in mind the fingerings and the rhythms and your pick control. But it's a great song, and it's a relatively simple one to play, so I hope you guys enjoy that. So if you're going to buy your first guitar, or if you're going to buy a guitar for somebody else, the first thing you need to know is whether you want to buy an electric guitar or an acoustic guitar. And both have a ton of options. So I've lined up a few here just to run through a few of those options and let you know what you can expect and what you might be looking for. The whole story starts here with what is known as a Dreadnought. This is a a full-sized acoustic guitar. The body is quite large. It's got a resonant chamber, a pick guard, your fretboard, your headstock, the whole nine. And it's one of the more common types of guitars there are. And the big takeaway from it is that it's actually quite large. If you have to reach around it for a long time, you don't want to have the neck of the guitar down when you play, so you sort of hold it up, and it can be a little cumbersome if you're a smaller person. So make sure you sit with the guitar and play with it if you're able to before you buy anything. And if you're buying it for somebody else, it might be worth your time to have them try it before you actually buy it for them. The size of the guitar does matter, but so does the shape. And that brings us to the second type of guitar that we have here. And these are all Alvarez's. Our second one here has what they call a cutaway. And what that does is it gives you access to some of the higher frets. Whereas on the regular Dreadnought, the frets you sort of lose access to the frets around the 14th fret. On some models, it's actually the 12th fret, but in this case, and the more standard models, it's the 14th fret. On the Cutaway model, you can reach all the way up to, this is the 19th fret. It only has 20 frets. You can actually reach number 20 as well, but notice what my hand is doing to get that done. My thumb is clear back in the very back of the neck. We're way out of position. This actually is how you would play these notes, though. So, if it's a priority for you to be able to play a little bit higher up on the guitar, maybe a cutaway is the way to go. Also, this one has an electronic boost in it, so you can plug it directly into the amp, whereas our first one did not. Now, they do make Dreadnoughts with electronics in them, but this one just happens to have them built in too. So that's something else you might watch out for. It can add a little bit of price point, but it does come with a tuner and an EQ and a volume knob. And it runs off of a 9-volt battery, so you'd have to have a 9-volt battery. You can plug it directly into your amp and have it amplified instead of just acoustic, give you a few more sounds out of it. But it's roughly the same size as the Dreadnought. As you can see, the two are still sort of bulky around the body where your arm has to reach over. This one's a little bit smaller, fits a little bit more comfortably on me, but not everybody's the same size. And that brings us to our last option. This one is the Alvarez Regent series, and it is a fine guitar, but you can see it's quite a bit smaller than the ones that I was dealing with there. It's not quite a 3/4 size guitar, but it's a little bit higher quality than a lot of the 3/4 size guitars out there. You can see it does not have the cutaway. Now the cutaway does hurt your tone just a little bit. It takes away a part of the resonant chamber of the guitar, and in turn it makes the tone a little bit softer. But in this case, it doesn't have the cutaway, and it still has a pretty good sound to it for the size of it. So, as I said before, there are a lot of things to consider if you're going to buy an acoustic guitar. The size, whether or not you want the cutaway, whether or not you want electronics, and of course there are a whole host of other elements that you could look at. But these are the main 3 types of guitars that you might find at your local guitar shop. So let's say that you've decided that you want to buy an electric guitar. There are a few things that you should watch out for. And I'm going to take you through a quick journey between these three electric guitars. They each demonstrate something different, and we're going to start right here with the Fender Telecaster. Now, Leo Fender invented the Telecaster. This was the first successful production electric guitar. They had electric guitars before this. A lot of them were just acoustic guitars with a pickup in it. But this was the first solid body electric guitar to really be commercially successful. They did make solid bodies before this, but this one really sort of took the market by storm. And it's a really popular guitar even to this day. But if you look at it, you might notice it's really just kind of a board. It's sort of routed into shape, and it's an iconic shape, but it doesn't have any contour whatsoever. Sounds great. But players started to complain that it was a little cumbersome to hold, and of course that doesn't mean it will be for you. But over the next few years, Leo Fender improved on his design and came up with the Fender Stratocaster. And some of the major differences that he made in those few years were that he added a body bevel for people who have a certain body shape, we'll say. He also added a little groove right here, a little incline for your arm to rest on, so it's not quite as cumbersome. Everything's a little more rounded, and of course, this shape for this guitar is the most iconic shape in all of rock music, and all of guitar music, really. Almost every company makes some kind of copy of this basic shape of a guitar, the Fender Stratocaster. Even the one I'm holding is a Fender Squier Stratocaster. It's Fender's own copy of their own guitar. And of course, it just sounds great too. We also added the tremolo. I'm going to go ahead and plug this in. Now, the way a tremolo works, we have a whammy bar, or a vibrato bar, as it's sometimes called. And the place where the strings are held in place is screwed in by these 6 screws at the front of the bridge. The back of the bridge actually is not held in place at all. It's just held in place by these 6 screws, and then on the back, we have a plastic plate. And if we were to take this plate off, you would see some springs holding in the underside of the tremolo here. So what this actually does, people see these all the time, they have questions. You play a chord or a note, and you can push inward. It was very popular when it first came out. It was a huge innovation in guitars, and again, almost every type of guitar maker has some sort of tremolo to offer. And this is the basic design behind the tremolo. Now, one of the problems that came with the tremolo is that as people started getting more and more experimental with it, they started doing heavier and heavier dive bombs. Which, I don't know if you can hear it, but that just knocked this guitar way out of tune. So, the tremolo, when you first get a guitar like this, most teachers would have you take the tremolo out and just not use it for the time being. And then eventually, when you become a more experienced player and sort of learn how to use it, and especially learn how to tune better, 'cause this is way out of tune now, you can always add it back in. It just screws out, and you can screw it right back in. But there was one more huge innovation left to come, and that came in the 70s. What I have here, this is a Jackson, and there are a few things that you should know about it. First off, it has humbucker pickups, which have a little bit more output than what we call the single coils in the Telecaster and the Stratocaster. They also give you a little bit advantage on the tone because you can turn it up without having quite as much background noise. And we'll talk about humbucker pickups another week. But the big innovation here was in the tremolo and in the nut. So the problem with the Fender Stratocaster tremolo is that when you push it all the way down, it loosens the strings up around their coils, and when they come back, they just don't quite come back as far. So Floyd Rose perfected this design where the strings are clamped in place down on the bridge end, and then on the nut end, you tighten them up, and then you screw down this piece here. It's called a lock nut. And these two pieces combined create the sort of pliability you need to really do dive bombs. And this is what what sort of drove the 80s sound, the late 70s and the 80s, and is especially used in metal and in hair rock in the 70s and 80s. You can see, you can just sort of dig in a little bit more, and it just doesn't slide out of tune. Also, you can go the other way. You can bring the strings up in pitch instead of down if you want, which is something that the Stratocaster could not do. Now, this guitar is very flashy, and this Floyd Rose looks really neat. This is a beautiful guitar, in fact. But if you're looking to buy your first guitar, or if you're buying a guitar for somebody else who might not be as experienced with guitars, a Floyd Rose is actually a rather complicated thing to own. So it's something that you would either have to research pretty heavily before you buy it, or you might just want to avoid altogether until you're playing things that are a little more advanced and you have a little bit firmer grip on guitar care. All right, guys, next we're going to do the lick of the week. And for this week, I've chosen a bit of a jazz lick. What we're going to do is we're going to outline an A7 chord. I'm going to play the notes of an A7 chord with a few approach tones and see if you can follow this. I'll do that one more time slow for you. And of course, you can add in that A on the top string if you want. One more time quick. I'm going to start with my pinky finger on the 8th fret, and I'm going to slide into this 9th fret, the C sharp. And then I'm going to drop all the way back to my pointer on the 5th fret of the A string to carry the root of the A chord. Next up is the dominant 7. And then we're going to go down to the 7th fret on the G string, down to the 5th fret on the G string. We're sort of surrounding this third of the chord. We hammer on from the 5 to the 6. So we go 7, 5, 6, then up to the root of the A chord. Now you could stop there, but instead I've decided to go a little bit further into the next lower octave, into the dominant 7, up another string to the 7th fret, and then you can add that A on the top if you'd like. We're ending with the octave a little bit higher. So slide into the 9, 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 6, 7, 5, 7, 6, 5, 3, 4, excuse me. So So sliding into this, this third, the C sharp, gives us a little bit better feel rather than just playing an arpeggio. That's what just the arpeggio, just the notes of the A7 chord sound like. So to play that in a song, that's fine, that's good enough, but to really make it sound like a jazz lick, to make it sound like it came off the top of your head instead of playing a scale pattern that you've practiced over and over, we use approach tones, we use techniques like sliding, bending, and hammer-ons in this case. Right there, moving from the 7 to the 5 into the 6. Musically speaking, that is a D to a C to a C sharp. And the C sharp is the only note that's in the A7 chord. So what we do is surround it. We go D, C, C sharp, and that sort of emphasizes that note, and it also helps with the timing of it. And again, there in the second half, we have the 7 is the A, down to the G, and then up a string to the E, and then we're just going to walk down chromatically. So the next note in the chord is all the way down here on the 4th fret, but we're not just going to jump to it. We're going to walk ourselves down. And the reasoning behind that slide from the 5 to the 4 is actually just that my pointer finger in the position I'm in lands on the 5. So to get to the 4, you can either lift and move it down, or you can just hold it down and slide it. And it just sounds a little bluesier, a little jazzier if you slide into it. And that's our lick of the week. All right, guys, it's time for us to enter the tone zone. We're going to take a look at our pedal of the week. And today, we have two. They are sort of the same pedal, but they have slight variations. This is the Ibanez Tube Screamer. And this is one of the most iconic pedals in all of rock and blues. It's been used by a ton of notable names, Stevie Ray Vaughan being one of the biggest ones. John Mayer also is a very prominent Ibanez Tube Screamer user. And we have two of them here. On the right, we have the Ibanez Tube Screamer TS9. And this one gets you a slightly beefier sound than the second one. That's the Ibanez Tube Screamer TS9. The second one we have here is the Tube Screamer Mini. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, miniaturized pedals have become a big thing in the pedal world in the past 5 to 10 years. This is actually a copy of the more iconic Tube Screamer TS808, which is the one that Stevie Ray Vaughan used. So I'm going to go ahead and click it on and give that a listen. That's our pedal of the week, the Ibanez Tube Screamer TS9, TS808, and TS Mini. Thank you for joining me on the Guitar Department. I've been your host, Joe Alton. Keep in mind that playing guitar is very hard. It kind of hurts a little bit at first. If you power through all of it, you'll enjoy this for the rest of your life.